town. Just briefly, this is a continuation of a program that we began in the fall with the purchase of 350 Quincy Street. And we're now requesting approval to purchase 3 additional properties on Quincy Street within the Parkview Commons affordable homeownership development. The intent here, as we discussed back in the fall, is really to redevelop, to assemble parcels and redevelop the property to add to our affordable housing inventory, and also to address longstanding flood compliance issues with respect to preserving the existing units. We're proposing to finance the acquisition through the issuance of short-term bond anticipation notes. There's a companion appropriation or authorization bill attached. The costs are associated with the financing would be picked up by the Housing Trust Fund. So our intent is really to issue short-term notes, roll them from one year to the next, to give us flexibility for the next couple of years while we identify a development partner, secure permitting, other financing, and redevelop the property. And during that time, the Housing Trust Fund would cover the annual interest and carrying costs associated with the notes. Eventually, the principal would be repaid, debt retired through the proceeds from the sale of the property. It's our intent to do that after the property's been successfully redeveloped. The intent is to, again, purchase. We have 1 property currently. We have 3 additionals that we're 3 additional properties that we're seeking to purchase, and we're in discussions with 1 or actually 2 other homeowners. So ultimately, our goal is to assemble 5 to 6 lots, relatively contiguous to one another, to be part of this first initial phase of redevelopment. I think it's we've presented this to the Affordable Housing Committee. I don't know if Chairman Grathwohl is with us this evening from the Affordable Housing Committee, but I asked him if he would wish to attend. He'll be there Monday night, I believe. It's also been reviewed and approved unanimously by the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance as to the financing, and received a favorable referral from the Planning and Zoning Commission under Connecticut General Statutes 8-24. And I think I'll stop now and take any questions that members may have at this time. Thank you.
Mark, you don't have a developer at the moment, right? This would be compiling the houses. Okay.
The idea would then be, now that we have site control for hopefully for 4 properties, possibly 1 or 2 more, we would then solicit proposals or qualifications from interested development partners, either for-profit or nonprofit entities, and then also discuss with them or through them other possible financing for the project for development phase.
Okay, thank you. Representative Gerber.
Yeah. Hey, Mark, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, good. Hey, how are you doing? Thanks. Bill Gerber, District 2. Mark, I'm sorry if you probably talked about this last time, but can you remind me the appraisal values for these properties, do they factor in a deed restriction, or is this like the market value, assuming no deed restriction?
No, they do reflect the current deed restriction, and they are all within the maximum resale formula price as provided by the resale restrictions as well.
Okay, so the appraisals in the ones in the deck that you sent us, I skimmed through it. I couldn't figure out where the deed restriction part was, but it's in there.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Okay. And the other question I had was, do you know what? Well, first, I guess the next question. So these are single-family homes, but you're going to redevelop these as multi-family units, right?
We would do this as a condominium development more than likely, with the town underlying the town owning the property and doing a ground lease. But to answer your question, yes, we're contemplating probably 2 or duplex or triplex units here in replace of the single family homes.
Oh, okay. And then I was just curious, the appraisal values, I think they added up to yeah, like what did you already negotiate the price with the sellers? The $901,000. That's already a negotiated price, right?
Yes, that is our contract purchase price.
Okay, and then you're adding to that the $295,000 from the first purchase, and that gets you to just under $1.2 million. And then I was just wondering if you could reconcile that with the $2 million. Is that for additional homes, or is that for the redevelopment? Okay.
No, it would be for the purchase of 1 to 2 additional properties within that $2 million appropriation. Of course, the actual purchase of those properties would need to come back to this board for approval.
Okay, but you're probably going to have excess, because that would be about $800,000 of room there for 2. And that would probably be more than you needed, right?
I would anticipate, yes, it should be more than sufficient. Okay. We would only issue the amount of financing we would need to actually cover the purchase acquisition cost. So if the actual acquisition cost was only $1.5 million, that's all that we would issue the notes for.
Okay. And I am curious if you have information on the original purchase price of the people who are selling, and what their capital gains are going to look like, in sort of in the context of a lot of discussion on sort of generational wealth and how that can be made through housing ownership. Do you have that information on what the gains are going to be for them?
It might be easier if I provide that to you. I don't know how much time, but I will say that all three of these homeowners are original purchasers of the units, so they've owned it for a period of time. But I do have that information.
Okay, great. Thank you. Those are all my questions.
I'll make sure to get that out through the moderator.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions for Mr. Barnhart? Somebody, who's that, Ed? Representative Bateson? Or Mr. Bateson?
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Hey, Mark, how you doing?
Good, Ed, how are you?
Good. Quick thing. Sorry, I just jumped on. I missed your presentation. I'm interested in the business model here. From what I read, you're going to be servicing the debt. I just want to know, is there some sort of P&L from the housing committee or the trust fund that we can see, or how are you going to generate the income to pay off this debt?
Well, based on where we have been, we currently have a balance of $670,000 in the, which does not include the $295 that we already laid out per Quincy Street. So we've generated roughly $1 million in the 2.5 years the fund has been in existence. The inclusionary zoning fee has been in existence. So our original projections in working with the Planning and Zoning Commission with that, we expected to generate roughly $300,000 to $350,000 in annual income through the inclusionary zoning fee, and we've done a little better than that in the 2.5 years of grades. So it should be more than adequate. The annual permit fee should be more than adequate to cover the interest and carrying costs associated with its note. Conservatively.
Okay, what's this note? Is it a 20-year note?
It's a 10-year bond, but our intent is not to actually issue the long-term bond. It's actually to issue short-term notes, bond anticipation notes, and roll them from 1 year to the next. So even at 2%, which is very conservative, on $2 million, which is the full amount, that's less than $50,000. It's $40,000 a year. So we have more than adequate in the housing trust fund to cover the cost.
Okay, how much? What do you anticipate having left after this? Is there any other excess fees that you? I mean, I don't want you to see you deplete yourself on this purchase. Is there, if something else comes up, are you going to be able to act? What's your feeling?
That's to your point, and that's a good question. And to Bill's earlier question, that's why we were requesting $2 million authorization. So we're going to have to come back to you if there was some minor costs associated with the financing. We don't want to have to amend the authorization to do that. So the $2 million that we're requesting is more than adequate to cover the purchase of not the 4 properties in question, but 2 additional properties, up to 2 additional properties, and all other costs associated with this purchase.
Okay, and what's the plan for the 3 properties? Are we buying them, tearing them down, and constructing, and then are we holding and renting or selling?
We do anticipate, similar to with 350 Quincy, at least one of those units having a holdover tenant, which frankly we don't mind. It'll take us probably a year to get a developer on board and start with the permitting and financing process. So at least during that period of time, the units would be occupied. Our plan would not be to demolish the units until we have all the financing in place. We have a development plan approved. Any development agreement that we would have with a development partner would have to come back to this board as well. So there'll be opportunities for me to provide regular updates to the board. I'd like to maintain the assets until such time as we're actually ready to move forward with the development plan. And at that point, demolish the units and then build new.
Build new, and we would own, and then we would be selling?
We would be selling. These are set up as to continue as ownership units, so they would be structured as a condominium as opposed to current fee title.
Okay, and you're anticipating duplexes or triplexes on these, and to satisfy all the flood restrictions?
Yes, more than likely triplexes in order to help cover the cost. Even with that, we do anticipate the need for some level of subsidy if we're going to meet our goal of increasing for affordable housing. There are other ways to obviously cover that cost. Really, if you're doing affordable housing, you either have to subsidize the development of it somehow, or provide for a higher level of density on the site. We think we'll need to do both.
Okay, and I assume there is a profit motive here to a degree that you want to keep this engine running. If when you go down, you tear down one, you put up a duplex, you sell that, you're going to keep the proceeds in the fund, and then you're going to use that to acquire the other properties in there. Is that your game plan?
Yeah, ultimately, I think that is the game plan, but I think we'll take it one step at a time. I'd like to at least make sure that we get through this first initial phase. You don't know what you don't know. So I think, as with any development, there's going to be issues that crop up, and we want to make sure that we're in a position to address those. But I think that is the long-term game plan, Mr. Bateson.
Okay, all right. That's what I'd like to see. I see where you're going with this. The business model seems to make sense. I just want to make sure that we're keeping an eye on the long term. That I don't know what is there, 20-something properties down there. That if we can do that to all of them.
Yeah, I think part of it is demonstrating success to the other homeowners there. These are the ones, as I indicated, all these units, the 3 in question here, are original homeowners and are ready at this point in their lives to move on to other types of housing. So it's kind of the low-hanging fruit, but with respect to others, I think once we demonstrate the success of this initiative, and others will want to, I anticipate others will want to take part. So it is good to be thinking forward, but part of it will be we'll get back with more specifics in terms of the development pro forma as we work with a development partner on this. But that's the plan.
Do you see this $2 million, the authorization? Do you see that as funding part of the development?
No, this is just for the acquisition only. If it were, we'd have to come back to you because it doesn't cover that in the authorization.
Okay. All right, I'm good for now. Thank you.
Mark, there are a couple more folks who have questions, but I was thinking
Sure.
maybe you could, you've presented about the project. Is there more that you'd like to add about the bonding? Because that's a separate resolution, but we might as well. We're sort of getting to that with Mr. Bateson's questions. Is there anything?
Yeah, they're very interrelated. I did want to recognize
Mm-hmm.
that bond counsel's here if there are specific questions in terms of the actual financing language.
And Mark, you said that, I think you just said to Mr. Bateson that this would reimburse the Housing Trust Fund for the prior purchase.
Correct.
It would pay for these 3, and then you'd still have funds for 2 more houses? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay. Representative Vergara.
Thank you. Jill Vergara for District 7. Hi, Mark.
Hi, Joe.
Asked you some of these questions before with the other purchase, and you probably answered it. I just can't remember the issue with flood insurance. I know one of the reasons why we're doing this is because the flood insurance costs just increased incredibly, and I wanted to get a sense of what the flood insurance costs are currently, and do you know that what the current homeowners are having to pay in flood insurance?
No, it really varies depending on, whether they continue with flood insurance to begin with. There are some that are fortunate enough to have paid off their mortgage, and then they can elect whether or not they want to continue with flood insurance, and I believe some have not. But most mortgage lenders will require not only homeowners insurance, but flood insurance as well. And my understanding is that those costs can be double that of the homeowner's insurance. But again, it depends on the circumstances and the policy and the carrier.
Okay, and so when we purchase these, we take on that liability. Are we paying for the flood insurance as soon as we purchase them?
Our intent would be not to do that. We would include these within for general liability purposes in our coverage with Kerma, with our carrier, but we would essentially self-fund that risk for the time that we're talking about. And again, the overall plan here is to demolish the units and build new.
Right.
And
once they're built new to certain specifications, it doesn't require the same type of flood insurance?
That's correct. That's my understanding, yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Representative Gerber.
Yeah, hey, Mark. I'm just, look, page 2 of your memo.
Yep.
You say the principal would be repaid and the note retired using proceeds from the sale of the properties.
Correct.
So that is the plan, right? And right above it on page 2, you have you wrote that the existing units, which are quite dated and energy inefficient, would be demolished and new duplex, triplex units would be built in their place at the proper flood elevation. So the duplex, triplex units, your plan is that the value of what you're going to be building and selling should be greater than the $300,000 or approximately $300,000 of the existing homes, and that there will be a net profit?
I wouldn't say net profit. Our aim is to break even through this process. Okay. And I do anticipate that, that we'll need to get some financing, even moderate financing, such as using community development block grant funds to do the demolition of the existing structures would be some level of subsidy. But again, we do have the ability to self-finance or self-fund this through the Housing Trust Fund. I think the issue here is that in the event that we're not able to recoup fully the sale price that we paid for these units through the sale of the properties, through the proceeds, the Affordable Housing Committee and the Housing Trust Fund is prepared to make up that shortfall. So that's what we discussed with the Affordable Housing Committee, and it's been discussed consistently with the other town boards. So I don't think that's likely, but I just want to make sure that the RTM is aware of that commitment as well. In the event that we're not able to fully realize the money that we laid out to purchase the properties through the redevelopment and sale, the Housing Trust, that's the purpose of having a Housing Trust Fund, to be able to step in and fill that gap if needed.
Okay, thanks.
Representative Iacono.
Thank you, Pam Iacono, District 8. Through you, Madam Moderator, I'm not sure if this is for Mr. Barnhart or Attorney Staffstrom. I'm having difficulty understanding the resolution for $2 million versus what's actually needed, with maybe then a little bit of flexibility. I didn't have a chance to watch the Board of Finance meeting. Why so far over what we really need? Why are we taking
Well,
it
I'm
to
not
$2
sure
million?
it's that far over. I mean, the intent would be to acquire up to 6 properties. So we have purchased 1. We're under contract to purchase 3 additional properties and potentially 2 more. So I guess if we're all roughly 300,000 for that, it would work out to 1.8. There is, we did want to leave a little bit of contingency in there to address some of the issues that Mr. Bateson raised. If there are other costs associated with it, either legal costs or financing costs or other costs associated with the actual acquisition of the properties, we wanted to make sure that the funding was in place to do that. Again, the intent would not be to issue more than what we actually needed to cover the purchase acquisition cost and any other supplemental costs.
I guess what caught my ear was the fact that you said you would have to come back here anyway if you wanted to purchase the other 2 properties.
Well, it is required to have the Board of Selectmen, Planning and Zoning Commission, and RTM approve any acquisition of property as well as sale of property. So that component would require your blessing, your approval. It is helpful for me to actually have the financing in place through the various town boards, including the commitment from the Board of Finance, so that we can. That was a question that one of the homeowners had posed to me that I'm in discussions with. So we wanted to make sure that we did have approvals and financing in place to move forward if he wanted to actually sell the unit to us. So that's, I just thought we're dealing with it now. Let's just get money in place to do what we intended for this first phase.
And the prices are what the prices are based on the appraisal and the first refusal.
I can't pay more than what the appraised value is. So they're all going to be roughly, I think they're going to be in that 290 to 310 range. I don't want to get too specific, but I think they're all in that range, somewhere around 300,000.
Okay. Also, regarding the issuing of bonds and payments and fees and such, how does that all work in terms of fees and things that we owe? Attorney Stastrom, how much money does your firm get paid? How does that work? How do the costs work on all of those things?
We would include the bond issue, a normal note issue, as part of that note issue.
Sorry, you're cutting out. You're cutting out.
The amount of the note.
John, you may turn off your camera. That may help.
Turn off the video. Can you hear me now?
Sort of.
Can you hear me now?
That's better, I
Is it
think.
better if I call in?
Why don't you try?
Can't hear me.
Try again, John. Let's see.
Let me call back in.
Now we hear you.
Let me call back in. Hear me now?
Okay.
The note issue for this would be included in a normal town bond note issue. So on our basis, representative, so it would be whatever we
can't really hear you.
For that issue.
Do you have a landline you can dial in from?
We couldn't hear you, John.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do have a question.
Okay. I have a question too for Mr. Barnhart. So, and I apologize, it took me a minute and a half to log into this WebEx. We don't have a developer that we've partnered with yet. You do have a partner? Where are we with that?
I'm going to have to go back out. We did try this a few years back. We had 5 respondents to our RFP. So I anticipate that some of those same entities would be interested. What we didn't have at that time was site control or financing in place to do the purchase. So backed up, and we're starting with getting the financing in place to make sure we have site control before we proceed further. So our plan would be in the next 6 months to go through that process and identify a development partner for this project.
And so then the net gain here you think would be possibly 8 units if we were to get the 4?
Well, again, I think that's on the low side. I think we may actually need to do triplexes here, but definitely 8 would be the low end. I think the low end of the range. Yes.
Okay. And how long do you think it's going to take to get
John.
the whole project back together? Sorry, John.
I think this will take us the 3
Okay.
years that we need.
3 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I apologize for my technical difficulties. It's John Safstrom.
That sounds much better, John.
I know. I was answering the question. This note would be included in the normal town note issue, and so will be included whenever fees that we included in that note issue. We normally bill on an hourly basis, depending upon the size of the notes. We normally do your notes when we do your bonds together. I can't imagine that a $2 million note is going to add very much to the fees, because the work involved in putting together a note issue is pretty much the same no matter what the size of the note is.
Okay. And we pay Pullman Comley directly? We don't pay you as an individual attorney?
Oh, God, no. I wish you did.
So the payment goes to the firm as a whole?
The payment goes to the firm. The payment goes to the firm as a whole. And as you probably know, we've been bond counsel for the town for something like 60 years now. So it goes to the firm as a whole. And we typically bill when we bill when we do the note or bond issue, and the fee is paid out of the proceeds of the notes or the bonds. It's not paid out of the town's general fund.
Great. Thank you very much.
Representative Gale.
Hi, thank you. I actually also wanted to find out about the number of units, and I'm not clear about the 830G or whatever it is. What if the regulations are by occupant or by square footage? Or I don't actually know what those regulations are, and I'm just wondering how far this gets us towards our goal.
Oh, okay. Well, we wouldn't be proposing an 830G against ourselves. So put that right on the table here. So
we're avoiding that.
But in terms of the point, yes, right now, as home ownership units at 80% AMI, they count 1.5 points, and I think you get an extra bonus quarter point for a 3-bedroom unit.
Okay.
So at least we would pick up some additional units as a result of increasing the number of affordable units there based on that. So it's based on the percent, the income threshold that you're targeting, as well as ownership versus rental. Then do get a bonus currently, although I believe that setting for 3-bedroom units.
Okay, and so obviously it's a benefit if we can do the triplexes instead of the duplexes. And I'm just wondering if there's any issues with the zoning or with building in that in that area geographically, with an issue with a triplex.
It's currently a Residence B zone, so a triplex would require us to make some provision within that for a triplex as opposed to duplex. These are conforming duplex lots, but in my conversations with planning and zoning, similarly to the Greenfield Commons development we did, where we did a 10-unit senior housing development on a half-acre parcel of land. That didn't fit squarely within the confines of zoning at that time, but because it was a use of the town, we were able to make the case and get town planning and zoning approval. So I think here too, the advantage for the town doing this development with a development partner is that these units will be deed restricted in perpetuity. So they're not restricted for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, and then they just become market rate units. I think that's the advantage of the town doing, participating in this project, in that will ensure that they're affordable for the long term.
Okay. And one last thing, like, are you anticipating the Affordable Housing Authority having to function as like the condo administration for this complex? Like, is there
No, no,
administrative
definitely
function?
not.
No.
You know, we do have some experience working with another homeowners association, which is the sweat equity housing, so to speak, on Greenfield Nordstrom Street. The town sometimes get pulled in as an informal advisor, but they essentially function independently of the town.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Bateson?
Yeah, thanks. Ed Bateson, District 1. Quick thing. Mark, I want to follow up on Representative Aguirre. She had mentioned something to you. What? I just want to get my facts straight. This authorization is for the purchase of 3, but you said we're under contract for another, or there was a previous unit? What's that?
Yeah, so we purchased 350 Quincy back in the fall, and we paid out of the Housing Trust Fund $295,000 for the purchase. At the time, because of timing, we weren't able to get the financing in place. It was our plan, certainly the Affordable Housing Committee's intent, to go to Board of Finance and ask for this authorization at that time, and we weren't able to do that. So in conversation with bond counsel, we asked, okay, if we recapitalize the fund, basically our plan is to just hold the property for a short period of time to facilitate redevelopment. And so the idea was to put the 295 that we laid out back in as part of this note authorization and just pay the financing costs associated with that. And then once we have the property redeveloped, then replenish and retire the note from the proceeds.
Okay, so right now that's that 295 plus we have 3 that you're looking at right now, and you said the possibility of 2 more.
Possibly 2 more, yes.
Possibly 2 more. Okay, I got that. I just want to revisit the theory behind this. You're asking to Representative Iacono's question.
Mm-hmm.
This is the $2 million is just to authorize you to purchase. It's a bond authorization. So basically you have financing in place. You just don't have, let's say for the additional 2 properties, you don't have, what do I call it? An appropriation in place. So you'll have to come back for an appropriation to appropriate those funds.
I can't unilaterally purchase town property or sell town property. So it would need to come back to the Board of Selectmen, Town Planning and Zoning, and this body for the approval to purchase additional lot.
Right.
But the financing would be in place.
Okay, so I'm assuming the theory behind this is that you're a good intended buyer when you're talking to these people. Is that the purpose of us authorizing this now, so that you can go there and say, I already have financing in place, all I need is the authorization? Yes,
it's one less step in the future. This is a convoluted process to begin with. So, and I'm not trying to cut any corners, but it's definitely a very lengthy, deliberate process to begin with. So
the next 2 properties, I'm anticipating you're just going to go to the Board of Planning and Zoning, Board of Selectmen, and the RTM to acquire property.
Yes, I don't have to make a stop at the Board of Finance. Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And Mark, this will help with the issue you had with that one property where you had to kind of scramble you had to use the Housing Trust Fund money, right? Because we didn't have anything like this in place for you. So now you'll have the funds available and you can you could be more nimble, I would think.
Yes,
right?
I mean, yes. It certainly would provide some assurance that we have the financing capacity and a plan approved to do this. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Are there any other questions for Mr. Barnhart? I think not. So thank you very much for speaking with us.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your attention to this. Have a good rest.
Thanks. You too. So we'll turn now to the supplemental warning matters. There's two similar to this. There's an allocation and a bond resolution regarding the water treatment plant. So who do we have to speak on this? I'm sorry, I don't have the presentation schedule in front of me.
I'll speak, Madam Moderator. This is Jared Schmidt. I'll start it off.
Thanks, Jared. Okay.
You're welcome, and thank you for accommodating this. This is important to get this done in a timely fashion. So there's two resolutions in front of you, and so I just want to give a quick overview of the two and a little bit of background, and then I'll talk about what exactly it is we're looking for, what we're requesting. So this started back, there was an authorization, first authorization in 2015. And since then, there have been a few changes to the amount of funding required, to the amount of bonding required, and also to the amount of grants. And when you look at the first resolution, you'll see that in the preamble, there's a timeline of all the changes that have happened. And if you go to the last page of this piece of the backup, you'll see a spreadsheet there that lays it out in terms of what happened on what date, so you can follow along there and get some of the details. But the short of it is the cost of the project increased from a little over $3 million to a little under $8 million to $7.7 million, and 7.4 of that was to be bonded. And so that's where we stand right now. It's at 7.7 and change that is authorized to be spent, and 7.4 million is authorized to be bonded. In addition to that, as it was adopted by the town boards, the town is currently slated to pay $385,000 of that cost, and the WPCA is supposed to be paying 3.7, and the remaining part of that would be funded through grants. So that's as of today, that's where we stand. So here's what we're requesting, and there's basically three parts to it. The first part is $1.888 million in additional appropriation in authorization to spend. And so that would bring the total to 6.9 million, the total for the entire project, 6.9 million that we would be authorized to spend. The increase, which can
9.6, Jared.
I'm sorry, what did I say?
6.9.
Oh, sorry, a little dyslexic tonight. 9.6. Thank you. Thanks for the correction. Okay, so the increase is a result of additional contamination that was found in the soil in the path where the berm was being built and where the wall was being built, and so the additional cost is almost completely related to that, the remediation of it and the disposal of it. So again, so the first piece of this is 1.888 million more in a spending authorization. The second piece is a reduction in the bond authorization from the 7.4 that it's currently at down to almost $6 million. And that's the result of having confirmed and received grants. So those grants, which total about 3.6 million, I'm sorry for throwing so many numbers at you, but it is what it is. So the 3.6 million in grants is reducing the amount that's needed to be bonded. Finally, in the second resolution, I'll talk about this now, just it may preempt some questions. The second resolution addresses the change in allocation. So originally, for the amount that is out there now, as I mentioned, the town is scheduled to spend 385, and the WPCA 3.7. So what this would do is say that the town would take on this additional amount, the 1.888 million. The town would take on 100% of that amount, and the effect of this overall would be that the town for the entire project, and what I'm talking about is the non-grant portion of the project. The town would end up paying 38%. WPCA would end up paying 62%. Just to give you, and one of the reasons that there's been arguments on both sides about how much the town should pay, how much WPCA should pay. But one thing to keep in mind is that the whole intent of this project is to really to secure and protect all the property that's within the boundaries of the wall that's being built. And part of what's inside of that property is the regional fire training school, as well as the animal control building. And so the town has assets in there which would also benefit from this addition. So that's what we're asking for, and I believe that John Marsilio is on, and Laura Pooley, I think, is also on to answer any technical questions you might have about the project itself. That's the quick history and the financing portion of this.
Thank you. Representative Vergara.
Hi, Jill Vergara for District 7. Hi, Jared. So I thought the chart was really helpful. Thank you for that. But I just did want to see if you could parse out some more details about the financing. So you bring the total to the 9.6 million, and I wanted to see if we could break it out by source. You said, so what's making up the 9.6 million? A piece of that is grants, right? So that's 3,632,102. Is that the grant? Yeah. Okay. And then the WPCA covers 3,702,163. Okay. And then the town, out of its general fund, right? This isn't bonded, but this is out of the general fund, would be covering 2,273,500. We can't hear you. We still can't hear you.
How about now?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so that would, the amount from the town would be bonded.
Oh, okay, because I don't,
Yep.
the resolution said something about out of the general fund.
Which page?
It's page 2 of the supplemental allocation resolution regarding WPCA funding. And so on page 2, it says, now therefore it is resolved that the 2019 allocation resolution is hereby amended to increase the maximum amount of costs to be paid from the town's general fund and or capital fund. Okay. Right. So it's either or, we haven't, it seems open to either. So are we going to take bonds out, or are we going to take that out of our general fund?
The plan right now is to bond it.
Okay. And I thought that original 385,000 was supposed to be out of our general fund. I thought that was the original arrangement.
185,000 was bonded, and that was we actually did bond. That's the only piece of this so far that has been bonded.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Bateson.
Hi, Ed Bateson, District 1. All right, Jared. All right. I see this 1.8 million. Now, what were the discussions that led us up to the town assuming responsibility? Is it because it's primarily related to contaminants at the site that the WPCA is saying that's really not related to us? That's prior history of the property?
So there were a number of factors in this. One being that when it was increased to 7.4 million, there was an assumption by the WPCA that that cost would be split 50-50. So that was what the board approved, the WPCA commission. When it came to the town boards, and I know this is a little bit, it may be more than what you're looking for, but I think it's kind of important to give you a context here. So when it came to the town boards, that same amount came to the town boards, that the town said that the WPCA was going to pick up the full amount of the additional amount. So WPCA was going to pick up 100% of the additional amount. That took it to 7.4 million. But there were definitely different opinions among different board members. Some thought it should be 50-50. Others thought it should be, around the 10% range. So the idea here was to essentially keep what's in place. So whatever the allocations are that are in place that you see on that last page of the spreadsheet up to date, keep that in place so we don't have to rehash any old arguments about this. WPCA would be upset, and I think other people on the boards would be upset. Leave that in place, and the town would take on the full amount, 100% of the additional amount. And again, I think that it's a compromise, and I think it's in between what different people were looking for and expecting. And also, again, it does help. There is a benefit to the town for this because this wall and this project is going to help protect the assets that are within there, some of which belong to the town.
All right, I want to follow up on, in 2019, when this appropriation went up, when we added to this appropriation, can you refresh my memory? What was that? Was that cost of material where we had to swap out something, we had to put in steel?
Yes. That's my understanding, is that and again, there are people on here, I think, that can probably speak more about this, but it was determined that for lack of a better word, a dirt berm wouldn't be appropriate for that because it would encroach on the wetlands, and so they had to change direction and go to a steel wall, which takes up a narrower space, but it added to the cost of it.
Okay, fill pile material. I remember there was a concern, I can't remember how this resolved. Did we use any fill pile material for these berms? Is there any money in here that is being allocated to remove fill pile material for a reason? Is anything like that going on here?
No, there's no direct
fill pile.
Nothing direct related to the fill pile. I'm sorry? I'm talking about fill pile material related to the litigation. Right, yeah, there was none of that. The contaminants were all were different in nature and from
so
years and years ago.
So the environmental, the LEPs, all this stuff is the PCBs that we've seen in there from the 40s that we've always encountered down there.
You probably understand more, but yes, that's my understanding as well.
Okay, maybe to Lori Pooley. I remember when we first approved this in 2015. This was hand in hand with the microgrid project that was supposed to occur down there. Did we ever do that microgrid project, or is that on hold waiting for this containment facility, or where do we stand on that microgrid project?
Laura, are you on? John Marsilio?
I don't know if Laura is on. This is John Marsilio.
I'm on.
Are you on, Laura?
Unmuted? Yes, I am.
Yeah, you're unmuted now. Go ahead. You can
go ahead.
address.
The microgrid has been going hand in hand. It did start when the hardening project started, and when we did hit the soil contamination, we put the hardening project on hold as we did the microgrid because we were excavating, and we had to make sure that the hardening is completed because the microgrid has to be protected by the flood wall around the facility, and it will protect the microgrid. So the microgrid is in fact started up again, and we are doing the same soil contamination removal wherever they're excavating for any underground electrical conduits. We have to remove any contaminated material that we encounter on the site. So it is expected to be completed this year along with the hardening project.
Okay, so we're still concerning the microgrid. Sorry, I don't mean to get off topic, but these two are related to a degree. I want to make sure that all our grants and everything, because I know that was being picked up, a good chunk of that was being picked up by other grants. I want to make sure that we're still current on all those grants and everything, but because this has been several years, are we?
Yeah, we are still current. As a matter of fact, the federal government extended the project completion date for the Cdbg disaster recovery grants. I think they gave it another 2 years to 2023, and we're expecting to be completed this year of September 30th, 2021. We've gotten multiple extensions. The state's been very gracious in granting. They understand, you know, trying to get these projects first of all off the ground and then get permitted, get funding for them. It takes a long time. We got our first approval of the grant was December of 2014, and like Jared had said, it was for the $3,088,000, thinking that we could use their fill material and create an earthen dike around the facility. And it's a good thing that didn't happen. The soil around there, we couldn't build a dike because Jared had said, you know, we have tidal marshes nearby. We have peaty material underneath, so that there would have been settlement occurring under the dike, and the dike wouldn't have been substantial flood control project. So that's when we switched to the steel component, which cost almost $2 million more. And that happened in around I think you were correct, about 2018 or so.
Okay, John, in your business, I know that this was after Hurricane Sandy. This was the flavor from Hartford and the feds that to protect these facilities, and this was we saw a lot of these projects efforts start. Are they going on? I mean, you know, have people looked at these and continued to pursue them? Are they actually, have you seen any completed, or is this, you know, was this like a pie in the sky vision that, you know, once we started, you know, towns started to try to undertake these projects, it just became too cumbersome, too, you know, cost prohibitive? I mean, I just want to make sure we're on the right track here and that we're seeing these things get completed elsewhere.
Well, could I speak on one
quite
project?
Frankly, sure. Go ahead.
We did receive funding and complete a project down on Pine Creek, which caused quite a bit of flooding during Sandy, and that's where we had that one culvert in the dike. It was a 48-inch culvert that got clogged. We removed it and we installed 4 culverts, and that was all using Cdbg money. It cost around $600,000, and it started and it was completed, and so that's one project that we're happy to say is completed. And we've also gotten planning grant money through the same funding source that we've started, and we completed a lot of planning studies for the South Benson stormwater pump station and the drainage area and some other smaller.
Laura, you're going off in the flood. I get that. I'm looking at the actual hardening and protecting the asset, you know, and you basically building a structure to protect something, you know. I just want to make sure that we're seeing these get built elsewhere. I just, you know, want to see what's going on in your industry. I'm not in it. I want to make sure that this wasn't a pie in the sky vision, you know, 10 years ago. And then when, you know, the engineers actually got boots on the ground, they're like, oh, this is crazy. We can't do this.
Maybe I could add a little bit of history to this, Laura. Laura, let me just help developed the motivation for this project. Everyone's probably well aware of the fact that the wastewater treatment facility per se is in need of a overhaul, and certain collector portions of the system, the sewer lines in the field are also involved in this.
The government's going to come after.
In order to rebuild the wastewater treatment facility, you would have had to adhere to the 100-year flood elevation, just the way those homes on Fairfield Beach Road are required to raise their home. The cost of raising that wastewater treatment facility to be out of the 100-year flood zone would have equaled close to $100 million. So that's when the town, from what I've read, sought out other solutions to enable the town, A, to protect that facility, which services in 2/3 of the town, and B, to avoid those costs and have to raise that facility with the understanding that the animal shelter and the fire training school and the conservation workshop would have also been there without protection. So that was the thought process. As I have read the history of this project, and this project is somewhat unique in that the elevation of that wastewater treatment facility is at such an elevation that it would have required been required to be raised.
Okay, so to my
could I just ask everybody to mute? We are getting some background noise here. And Mr. Bateson, we have a few people who had questions, so just to ask that we have time for those folks too. Okay. But I appreciate, I'm learning a lot from this track, so thank you.
All right, whatever.
Did you have more that you wanted to ask? Okay, I guess we're done. I had a question. Does anybody know if the Board of Selectmen approved this today at their meeting? Jared, do you know?
They did.
Yeah.
Okay. And has anyone considered whether, is this, I don't know enough about the federal funds that are available now, but is it possible that they can be used for this project instead of bonding? Have people looked into that?
So we are, now that we have guidance from the federal government, we're going to start to develop a plan or narrow down a plan for how to use that federal money. We'll consider any of the capital projects that we have in the pipeline now, and maybe some other ones. So we'll take a look at this and see if it does. There may be the possibility, if this is considered a resiliency project, that it may qualify.
Okay, thank you. Representative Vergara.
I think Representative Garskoff was before me.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Sorry, Josh.
No worries. Thank you. Josh Garskoff, District 5. So I think I heard 62% WPCA funds and 38% town funds, and I understand that there are other facilities in there that need to be protected. But we do have the big WPCA, the big sewage treatment plant project coming up, and I speaking for representing a lot of people who are not on the sewer system, I wonder what the thinking is by the administration about that big expense and how that would be allocated between WPCA and taxpayers.
That's again, I think is a larger question about how we're going to fund that. And it will definitely take it into consideration, because one of the things that does need to be determined once, assuming that this gets approved, is does the portion that is coming from WPCA come out of their fund balance, or is it something that the town will bond for and be quote unquote reimbursed for the debt service by the WPCA? So it's definitely a part of that decision, but we haven't, that hasn't been finalized yet.
Okay, but it's certainly a different scenario than this one, right? Because that's not about multiple facilities, that's about the sewage treatment plant, right?
Right. Yes. Yeah. And it's the magnitude of it is much bigger too. Yeah, for sure.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Representative Vergara.
Thank you. Jill Vergara for District 7. I think this might be a question for Ms. Pooley, because she was here. I think, Ms. Pooley, were you here during Superstorm Sandy with the town?
Yes, I was.
Okay, and so that happened, the storm happened in 2012, October 2012, and you just said that the approval of grants were in 2014. Is that a normal time frame? Because it is a really important project. I'm just concerned with how long this is all taken.
It actually, that's when we received the money. We put the first application in when the grant funding became available in 2013. We were not selected in the first tranche, and then they had a second tranche we applied for, and we were granted the funding. The boards approved and accepted the grant in June of 2015. And, it had to go to design. That took about a year, and we had to get our permits from the DEP and from the Army Corps of Engineers, and we actually got the permit from the Army Corps in 2019, just before the project was slated to start. So they do take quite a while. A project of this magnitude, and the type of permitting that was needed. I hope that answered your question.
It does. Yeah, it is a long timeline, because it was October 2012, and then the construction on the project began in January of 2020. So it's quite long, but I'm glad it started. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Bateson.
Yeah, Ed Bateson, District 1. I'm back. I just want to follow up with, I want to make sure that, John or Lori understand my question. My concern is when we approved this years ago, there was a discussion that other towns were going to be doing projects such as this, hardening projects to protect their treatment plants, because most of them are in flood zones near Long Island Sound. I just want to make sure that, have we seen any other towns that have completed these? And if not, if you don't have an answer tonight, that's fine. Can you just find out if in southwestern Connecticut or the Connecticut shoreline, anybody has successfully done these? That's what I'm looking for.
I could tell you that Stratford hasn't, Bridgeport hasn't, New Haven hasn't, Milford hasn't, Westport hasn't, and Stamford hasn't. I don't know what facilities were discussed during that time, and I don't know the elevations of those facilities.
Neither do I, John. I don't want to get into the details on that. We can assume that they're near the shoreline, probably in a flood zone for discussion purposes. I just want to make sure that this project is still relevant, necessary, and will, help us, considering the costs we're going into now. We're approaching $10 million on this project, just for hardening. I don't care about the grants. I'm talking total taxpayer in. We're close to 10 million. I want to make sure we're getting a bang for our buck here, and that, when this thing's all done in 3 years, we're the only guys that have a hardening. You know, I'm just saying.
Right. If I could speak, what John had mentioned, you are getting your best bang for your buck. If this wasn't done, when they do the facility upgrade, which is going to be coming up in the next couple of years, all of your mechanical equipment and electrical, everything, all the components will have to be raised above, I think it's the 500-year flood elevation, because it's a critical facility, you know, whether it's 100-year, I think it's the 500-year, such as this flood wall is set at the 500-year flood elevation because we're using federal money.
Guys, I got it. I know what you're saying. I just want to make sure there's other towns out there that are probably doing sewage treatment plant upgrades. They're probably in a flood zone. Are they doing the same thing? I mean, I'm just saying, I want to make sure that we're following the market, we're following the trends, we're following other towns. I just don't want to see us, you know, spending money on something that other towns have found a loophole. That's all, guys. I'm just, you know, look at other towns, see what's going on in your industry. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? I don't think there are. Thank you very much for talking to us about these supplemental resolutions. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
So we'll get ready to, thank you. We'll get ready to adjourn. I just want to remind everyone I sent you the call-in numbers for last page of the agenda. And if I could remind the chairs of the committees to please remember to record the meetings. So thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next Monday at our regular meeting.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good night. Thanks, Karen.